Welcome to Parichai with Pulipaka. Corona pandemic has clearly specified one thing to all of us. That is, think globally, act locally, but panic internally. There is another pandemic that demands the same reaction of panicking internally. That is climate change. Albert Einstein once said, "You cannot expect the same thinking that created the problem to solve the same problem." Today, post COVID or pre COVID, we still have a war against climate change that we should win. There are many people among us, especially youth, who are doing their bit in every possible way to win this war against climate change. They might be entrepreneurs who are developing products and innovative solutions to combat climate change. They might be young thought leaders who are trying to give their 2 cents for enabling a sustainable policy that is good for both climate as well as environment. And there can also be young working professionals who are making their mark in the sustainable energy development field. Parichai with Pulipaka is an idea that was conceived by me almost 6 years ago. Since last 6 years, I've been wearing a hat of a researcher, the hat of an entrepreneur, and now I am also trying to do my bit in the war against climate change by wearing the policy hat and working for the National Solar Energy Federation of India, which is the leading policy advocacy body for solar in the country. To this series, every Sunday, I would like to bring to you one leading young climate activist who is trying to do his or her bit in this war against climate change. Their bit might be as low or like as non-considerable as you might think, as just writing a blog or making even memes to educate people, or as high as developing products that have direct and immediate impact on our fight against climate change. Today, with us, we have one such young entrepreneur who has made his mark across the globe with climate friendly and innovative solutions. I would like to welcome now Mr. Govinda Upadhyay, who is the founder and CEO of LED Safari as well as Smart Hill. Govinda, welcome to Parichai with Pulipaka. So before I begin this conversation with Govinda, I mean, there are a lot of things to describe about Govinda, but I'll try to be as brief as possible because I have like 2 pages of accomplishments of Govinda written here. But Govinda is a very passionate climate change activist. He founded LED Safari and a little while ago, earlier this year, a company called Smart Helio also. He is a graduate from BITS Pilani, and then he continued his research work in TU Eindhoven and also KTH Royal University in Sweden. He is out of all his most notable achievements, he is he's in the Forbes 30 under 30 list for energy access leaders and also Asia's 21 young leaders of 2016. His venture LED Safari. When you talk about LED, you think about light, and when you talk about Safari, you think about luxury, and that is exactly what LED Safari is doing. LED Safari is trying to bring light into those communities who don't have luxury of having common or minimum education. With his passion and with an innovative design for solar LED lamps, he has conducted several capacity building activities across different countries in the African continent, in India, and he has a global team that is working out of, I think, even Latin America, Europe, India, and in many countries across the African continent. So without much ado, I would like to welcome Govinda for the first episode of Parichai with Pulipaka. Welcome, Govinda.
Thank you, Subbu, and it's a great pleasure to be with you. And thanks a lot for choosing me, the first one. I like it.
Sure.
Thanks, and thanks for such a beautiful introduction. I'm sure, there are many other people who are doing it, but yeah, you gave me a great introduction. Thanks.
No, the pleasure is all mine. But let us, since we are all millennials, let us keep this conversation casually. So, what do you think should be the key trigger or driver for youth to think about climate change, let alone act?
I think if you move around, so I traveled a lot during this short life. I'm 32. So I travel in India, I travel in Africa, I traveled a lot in Europe, Latin America, and you see the effect. And the effect is very profound for the poor communities. And that's quite heartbreaking, really. Like if you really travel, you really see it, because it's very easy to say sitting in a room and you can keep claiming that our climate change is happening because it's summer is too hot, or climate change is happening because winter is too aggressive. But if you see the life of people being affected, you have to really travel and see in the interior of even a country like India. So I think that's the passion. And also coming from BITS Pilani, I feel that we are good engineers. So it really feels good that you have to create something which can, impact people. It can change something, some delta change it can bring to people's life. And definitely like climate change is one of the most, let's say, important topic in millennials right now, we should be watching. Like I remember watching this movie, Back to Future or even Star Wars and all those sorts of things. And when you're growing up, you see like, in next couple of years, you'll be doing all these things, beautiful smart cities and flying aeroplane, like flying cars and all sorts of things. But now we are in 2020. Of course, we are handling this coronavirus pandemic that's like a very just happened a couple of months back. But the climate change is one of the issues that when you see the image of the planet, it doesn't look so good, and more in future we go, it looks more scary. So I think that's kind of things triggers me to be passionate about this topic and really try to do something where I can bring some change in the world.
No, excellent. I think feeling the impact in everything that you do is something that will drive the motivation and the passion behind any idea. But you are now sitting in Switzerland. You
Yes.
have a lot of activities in Africa.
Yeah,
You manage a team in Latin America. You have a new venture in India, and all of these are related to climate change and clean energy.
definitely.
So, one, I have two questions here. One, how are you managing a multifaceted team from people who come across from multiple cultural backgrounds, multiple sort of thought processes with a common passion of climate change? And second, how did you find these young people? Because I assume all of them are as young as you and below 30. So,
Yeah. So I think what is interesting about us or our team is that they all come from multicultural backgrounds. And I think that's the topic what I like to take it forward for other people also, that when you bring people from different culture, it really gives you perspective like what's happening in the world. Because it's a world problem. It's not India's problem. It's not Switzerland problem. It's not Europe problem. It's not Latin America. It's a really a global problem. So we have team members coming from Brazil, team members from Africa, team members from Asia, Malaysia, India, of course, and also European. And that's really gives a very beautiful perspective, like what should be the solution which can impact whole world together. Of course, we always say that the standardized solution not going to work in climate change perspective. That's agreed. But we should not forget that some solution you're bringing only in Europe, but that doesn't make sense at all in other countries who might be more affected. That's also not fair. So I think with having multicultural team, it really brings me like bring our team in a kind of a holistic view. It gives provide a holistic view like what's happening. How we manage is beautiful because really people are excited, and also thanks to internet, I don't think so now the world has remained in world is not in silos anymore. I feel like on internet people see, like I grew up in India watching American series and European and seeing about Africa, right? And of course same goes here on the other part of the world, like people watching about India stuff, and Europeans are watching about Asia and all stuff. So it's not that difficult in internet age to manage team on that. If you have a proper processes in place, that's good. Anyway, we are spending a lot of time on internet, so why not just work also? So if you see all the stats, more than like 30-40% of the time people are spending before corona itself on internet,
yes.
right? So it's not something new. I feel it's just matter of managing and also keeping the people's motivation on. So yeah.
I agree with you. So now that you have mentioned about American TV series and how people spend most of the time on internet, do you think there is a necessity for the climate change advocacy to sort of evolve? Because the other day I was talking to someone who is running this Instagram page on climate memes. So they just make memes on climate change, and of course, like everything and anything, Simpson also has predicted global warming and climate change long before. So, do you think we should sort of look into inculcating innovative ways of climate change related education and technology related aspects into our curriculum, because you work very closely on capacity building.
Right. So that was the whole motivation also when we started, like it was all education and training, because what we believe that this has to come from individuals, all of us, it cannot be the government role. It cannot be just industry's role to do it. It has to be a bottom up approach to do it. And education plays a very important role. So for example, I remember studying a coal plant, how coal plant works. Even in engineering, we were just discussing about how turbines work and all those sorts of things. Okay. But we don't talk about much climate change. I never read about this in my curriculum. I didn't even know that before even, become more conscious about it when we went to our universities and came out and oh man, that's really a big topic. So I think now is the time has come where the school system need to be activated in that format. Just to give you a small example, like if you see the West, so world is divided into two parts, Western world and the rest of the world. Some of the world like India, China, Brazil, all these big high growth countries, like even Nigeria, if you say South Africa, you talk about in Asian side, all these Southeast Asian are coming up.
Yes.
It's becoming like consumerism, more following the Western way of doing things. Okay, but if you see in the Western world, we have a lot of consumption in terms of plastic, and in terms of course meat consumption, and in terms of just energy consumption. We have a lot. Yeah. So I think what we need to do is, as a parents, I understand that it's very hard to change. If you talk about a 40-50-year-old person, it's very hard to change. And
Yeah.
even I believe that maybe sometimes it's us also, like, oh, we might not be able to change much what we do. But if you can start impacting this 5-year-old kid, and tell him to do certain things properly, he will bring it on. And it's a generational change what we have to bring. It's not a short-term solution. We have to change one complete generation to move from this whole carbon consuming society to the less carbon consuming society. I don't think so carbon will go away, but definitely what we can do, we can reduce slowly. So in this way, I feel educate, and it has to be globalized approach. You cannot say to some kid in India, some kid in Africa, some kid in America that you do and Europeans are not doing it, or Europeans are doing it but now other kids are not doing it. That doesn't happen. Carbon doesn't know the nation.
Exactly.
Carbon will flow everywhere.
I think you have actually covered two aspects that I mentioned in my monologue, that you have to think globally, act locally, but panic internally. So
True.
in terms of climate change, you have to think globally. And the part that you mentioned about the generation, because Einstein has said it in a different way, but I'm trying to paraphrase it. You can't expect people who created the problem to find a solution for it. So there was a generation of people who created the problem. Of course, they are part of the problem, they are part of the solution, but the onus is on us and the coming generations to ensure that it will go smoothly. But on this note, I wanted to know, for the sake of our viewers and also many young aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking or viewing our episode today, can you talk us through your journey in LED Safari?
Right. So what I started, like after doing BITS in 2010, I moved to Europe for my further study in sustainable energy technology. Europe has a good education on this sustainability side, and European society has evolved quite a bit on that. Yeah? Of course, they have their own challenges, but they do good on the technology part. So I wanted to learn. And then the whole idea was always that how I can apply all these learnings to really create something for people, that it can help people. And that's when 2012 I was doing my sorry for the background noise. I mean,
No,
it's Sunday here, so people are moving around and going. So
it's a relief to see something outdoors these days. So
yeah, and the weather is fantastic. So really, I don't want to miss the summer out.
very good.
So yeah, so back in 2012, like I was doing my master thesis on how we can bring smart electrification in developing countries. And then the case study was India, because the Indian thing I really knew quite a bit. So we did the first, and then after my research and all those things, the whole conclusion was it's an education problem, and the technology has to be built at the village level, at the local level. You cannot import some technology coming from Western world and start imposing on fast developing countries like countries in Africa or in Asia, Latin America. So the whole education started, and then I started aiming towards the children because I'm passionate about education, and plus also I felt that if you impact the children, it will become they will do a better job. So the first pilot we did I did in India with I designed a lamp which anyone can assemble it with just few components, and then it was whole. I developed this whole pedagogical approach, how to teach, because a lot of people in these remote areas might not be well educated to also understand the technical terms. So how can you bring it in a term which anyone can? It should be as easy as cooking a rice. I'm sure after Corona, a lot of people know how to cook rice at least.
I have more than
But,
with all the Instagram videos, they're making all the gulab jamuns and pani puris from scratch. So
well, that's what. So it should be as good as like you should be able to do it. And then we started, and then 2013, I went for my research in Switzerland, further on urban planning on climate change, how cities will evolve with the climate change. So it was a very interesting research I was doing. In the meantime, I continued my Let's Safari approach. Went to Kenya first time. We did training with 140 students in 1 month, going different parts, traveling myself. And what is important is that technology is not important. It's important the process, how you teach people, because some of the teaching in India might not be applicable in Africa, and same goes vice versa. Some of an African thing might not be applicable in Latin America. So you have to really understand how our children learn over there. So Kenya we did, we again trained, and in the meantime, I started developing my team and iterating over the product side. So I can show you some of the things. So it's like these kind of lamps. Okay, it's made up of cardboard. Okay. Then you get more sophisticated looking lamps like small plastic and this and this. Everything is assembled by people.
Okay.
Everything assembled by people using components like this.
Okay.
All this small components.
Battery and
yeah, battery, and all of them are optimized in a way that the circuit has to work. So it is a beautiful concept. It's a very beautiful. It works always, and the kids enjoy it. So the thing is, like, it should be fun doing it. It should not be tedious, and that's the whole process. So yeah, that's what happened. I stopped my research back in 2000, end of 15 and 2016. I started Let's Safari. It was a full-fledged team. After that, until now, we have reached almost 100,000 children. So what was a one bottleneck? That's interesting thing. So we were doing a lot of physical training. You know, my trainers will go on site, train the trainers, and then they will train the children. So that's how it was. At one point, when we reach around 5,000, 6,000 children, we realized that that's not the way to scale. You know, you need to go much faster. If I do a training of 5,000 children in 1 year, doesn't make sense. That's as good as just leave it. Like, you're not doing any impact at that side. At least what I was feeling. Of course, that is the impact, but I really wanted to go big.
5,000 is still a significant figure, but with the University of Technology, you can do a lot.
Yeah, we'd say like around 1.2 billion or 2 billion. I don't know, some crazy numbers always there that these people are not electrified. So that 5,000 is a very minuscule level. So at that time, we took help of digital technology. So we built a completely online platform which can run on mobile phones, which can run on computer or internet, a downloadable lessons so easy to understand that anyone who just sees the images, they're able to understand how to do it. And through that, we were able to massively, train our partners on site. So we had Rwanda, Zambia, Mozambique, in Senegal, Uganda, Kenya, of course, Tanzania.
You were able to offer them in their local language, like French or
exactly. French, English, even our companies, although the partners, it was mostly NGOs and foundation, they were able to translate into their own language. And also we gave a freedom for trainers to adapt the training according to their taste. So that's important. It should not be like something coming from Switzerland or something coming from Delhi or Nairobi. That should not be the case. So they were able to adapt it. And in the last, let's say 2016 and 2019, we were able to reach around 100,000 students, has been trained using our platform, or some trainers who were trained by us and they trained other people. So it has been a good scalability on that side. And I feel like digital is the way to go. If you really want to go mass impact on this. Digital is the beautiful way to go. Everyone is on laptops, computers, mobile phones. Now mobile phones are also getting so cheap that you can get internet.
Especially now after COVID, digital has been the only way to go.
Exactly, and this is the way to even. So, but what was interesting that there were locations in Rwanda we couldn't have reached over there. For sure, we couldn't have reached over there with limited resources. There was no roads. Sometimes the roads are flooded and all. I remember that village, and the people said that they were able to. The children in that village are able to create lamps and all that just thanks to teacher who had a mobile phone. We
Yes.
were able to ship the kids, and he'd learned everything on mobile phone with these instructions translated, and the kids are making lamps and doing it. So yeah, this is the way to reach, because you cannot build infrastructure so fast. Infrastructure takes time.
Yeah.
Digital doesn't take time.
No, I fully agree with you. And in fact, that was the first time I heard about LED Safari was when I was in Rwanda 2 years back, uh, where we were trying to understand the extent of decentralization in solar in the country, and then we were trying to see who are active, what capacity building activities are going, and then we stumbled upon LED Safari's model. But 100,000 students is not a small number, and
It's a good number. I'm proud that we have been reaching quite fast, and it's growing. It's growing slowly by slowly.
you didn't just teach them how to make a lamp. You actually like sort of you have knighted them with in the fight against climate change, because
Yes.
when they look back, like you see, when we fondly look back at what we learned or what are the interesting activities that caught our attention, there'll be some amount of curiosity to actually think about it during your process of growing up. So that you have imbibed and inculcated at a very young age. And especially for those people who are, like I told you, they don't have the luxury of it. Let alone in the conventional education system, this is not taught. And in those places, the conventional education system access is not there, and even it is there, they are deprived of it. For them, if it has actually gone to that extent, that means you have reached the latest of the last mile there in the grassroots. Now here, when we met for the first time in late 2018, we were in the same panel to discuss about the issue of microgrids in it. So now I'll slowly shift my focus to microgrids. But again, we'll come back to the capacity building, because that is very close to your heart, I know, and it's close to my heart also. And that's the main reason I started India Africa Youth Energy Forum. I believe that you're also very closely working on different allied technologies for microgrids. So what is your current work on microgrids now?
So right now on the microgrid level, or I won't say just microgrid, but it's more on data monitoring and making microgrid more efficient, because what I believe that when we put a microgrid, it's a very beautiful concept, okay, but it's economically not feasible.
Yes.
And you need your microgrid to be as strong as possible so that it should run for longer period, So what we have seen through my whatever the little history I have, that a lot of microgrids are there, but they're not working on full efficiency first. Second, a lot of these microgrids, like even I can put blindly a number like more than 50% or 70%, and I can challenge people on that these microgrids won't even survive after 5 years. Not because no one wants to use microgrid. No one knows how to fix the microgrid. Plus they don't even know what is wrong with the microgrid.
That's true.
So what we have done now, like of course we have a complete educational packages on that. We work closely with companies and entrepreneurs who are doing microgrid related work. Again, same with Let's Fly philosophy, online trainings and stuff. But also we have started putting monitoring devices and helping them to understand that if something is going to fail, identify that and how to fix it.
So preventive.
Not even preventive maintenance. Even if you just know that something has failed, what has failed and how to fix it, we are already doing more than 90% of the work. Preventive maintenance will come. That's more advanced level. But just to even identify the fault.
Sort of preventive intelligence on what happens.
True. Exactly. Something like that. So we have been doing that now. And I think that was the context we met in Intersolar Bangalore way back in 2018 in December.
Yes. So you, you are truly global. There is no doubt about it. But as a young guy, so I'm pretty much sure, because when I started my entrepreneurial journey, often they look at the color of your hair before they even talk to you or respect you. So did you face any of such challenges? Because you're dealing with not only people with established preconceived notions, but also someone who is not habituated to see black hair people in the same seat that you're sitting. So did you encounter any challenges, and if yes, how did you overcome?
I think like you always feel this one that okay, if you are too young, the you might not be so serious guy. Okay, so that's always there. I also face it. My team face it. In my team, I am the one of the oldest guys. So you can imagine like how they are dealing with the
Yeah.
situation. But I think what is needed is like anyway you'll feel challenges. It's all about like keep trying in different way, and there's always some people, always some wise people are there who'll help you, because if you're consistent, because they also tried so hard to reach to that level.
Yeah.
They have decades of experience. You cannot come and start saying that hey, I have 2 years of experience, I know a lot of things about. That's not so. You should maintain your humility, maintain your humbleness, but at the same time keep trying. And I think out of 10, even if one person listens to you, that's enough to create this snowball effect for you.
Right. No, that's a very, I think, a very good answer, and I think this hypothesis is well validated in many cases.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so now let's talk about what do you call Africa, because I've been there, and in fact, you have been there more than I've been there. You went to the grassroots level. You've seen what they mean when they say that they are serious about climate change and clean energy and energy transition. So you think that a continent whose predominant population will be of young people in the next 4 years,
Yeah.
do you think that they're equipped with the young population, especially, they're equipped with enough tools there to one get aware and to fight against climate change? If not, then what can we do?
Thanks for this answer. I think Africa is very close to my heart also. Just like I just love the continent, love a lot of countries I've visited. I love people there. It's a very exciting place to be in right now. Definitely young people are very excited. You see like everyone is doing something over there. Okay, like they're bustling with new energy. Two things what I feel that is required in Africa to really channel those energy into right path is definitely one is investment, that the government should really invest in good infrastructure, create jobs for people, or create this ecosystem where people can be more entrepreneurial. So even if like the lot of my young friends in Africa, they're very entrepreneurial, they don't get the opportunity right now to even, you know, they don't have opportunity. Access to opportunity is very less.
Yes.
So that can be created very, if that is done in a investment friendly way, that will be good. And second is like definitely they should focus on education, like really education which is more applied to them. So still I feel that a lot of educational things coming from other part of the world, and when children learn about something which cannot be even applied in their country perspective, it's very hard to imagine like what change I can bring.
But that is a context in India also.
Yeah, but it is evolving slowly. It has taken a long time, but it is evolving bit by bit actually. Okay? Ecosystem has been created in India. We are getting success stories, so that helps. Motivation is there in Africa also. The one time is, so coming to in one question is investments. The investment should be done properly on creating these opportunities for young people. Then on education side, education should be well crafted, not just blindly copied. And the third will be like, we should take out some heroes from the communities and show to them that hey, this guy did it or this girl did it, why not you? Because we all work as inspirational, that's it,
Yeah.
and nothing else. So that can be done much in
Yeah.
Africa, that can help them. Yeah.
Explain the theme of my show because all I wanted to do here was to bring out those people, because see, today in mainstream we talk about all these problems on superficial level, that is there is going this country's foreign ministry is fired, this is doing and all, and somewhere in middle you Greta Thunberg, in every week she pops up and then you talk about Greta Thunberg, climate change, and that's it. That's the end of climate change narrative on the mainstream media. No one
Yeah.
talks not people. There are a lot of foot soldiers like you, like people who are working with you in Africa. You have seen it, and I also seen it. They are very passionate about it. They all they need to do is to have resources and like you very right mentioned, very rightly mentioned, the instruments, both in terms of awareness as well as finance to do it. So that is very important. Now coming to another topic, uh, which is again what do you call very much underrated and overlooked, both at least in the Indian context and global also. I mean, both of us observe the market closely. Globally, I think it's picking up on the digitization aspect.
Mhm.
Pre-corona, so digitization was something less like somewhere up in the heaven. Today, it has become like essential service. So I'm sure, like you have smart Helios, you're working on digitizing both asset management, giving them intelligence and preventive maintenance and all. So how do you see digitization penetrating in India? How do you see the appetite evolving in India? And what can we learn? Because you're sitting in the digitization capital of the world. When you talk about Switzerland, you feel like you see a sci-fi movie or kind of thing. So what can we learn from that experience?
I think I feel like digitization was anyway coming to our society in a big way because our young ones are very well trained on digitization. They know how to handle smartphone. They can go around. They can find information. So access to information was already coming in this generation, the younger ones, not our, but even younger ones. So that's we cannot stop it. So now the whole idea is how do we leverage that? If that's the mean how the information will flow, can we do with that? And that's where the phase we are in right now. Like our generation millennials has seen the changes, coming from a landline phone to the brick phone of those Nokia era and then coming to the smartphone. So we have seen those worlds completely. And we have seen that how our world has become more and more efficient with that. Of course, there's some complication. We can talk about data piracy, security, fake news, etc. And etc. Of course, those bad things are there, but a lot of good things have come, which has created efficiency. So I believe that post COVID, like digitization is one way which will help, you know, kickstart the economy. Kickstart the economy. Okay, it might not be able to solve all the problem, but definitely it will. It is the way to go to if you want to accelerate your economy. So, for example, last depression when we had in back in 2008, it really took a lot of time. Like now in 2015, 16, people had started seeing some development happening. So imagine that depression that took almost 8 years to
Yeah,
pick it up.
but
So now this is the crazy one. This will, like, we will lose a lot of things, lot of knowledge being generated over the last decades will get lost because of this big thing is coming. But we can prevent it, or somehow we can jumpstart all this thing with going digitization in every aspect, and I think India has done very well in that. Like, I know it's amazing to see how even in villages people are using digital platform for money transfer, right? So that's pretty cool on that. People get access to news now. People are chatting on WhatsApp stuff. So very, very nice. And in Africa also the same thing happening. So now how can we use this digital uh, stream to leverage in different industries? Some industry might not leverage this one, but I believe like even 99% of the industries will leverage. If they're not leveraging, they have to do it now. Otherwise, you can't escape.
so Switzerland as an example, see, there are only two things Switzerland will be remembered for. One is the Swiss bank, which everyone talks about. Second is the Swiss cheese. But now, slowly, or cheese or chocolate, you can consider them in the same category. But now, slowly, uh, Switzerland is emerging as a Europe center for innovation in digitization,
Yeah.
because they have started this when it was not cool. Now, though, it has become coming to mainstream, but it was way back they started it. And I'm sure you've been there for quite a long time, so you've seen that. Now, and you've seen how it evolved. So in that evolution sort of graph, where do you think we are right now in India? At the beginning or in the middle or somewhere about to hit the saturation?
No, I think like I believe that developing countries are far, far ahead with the digital compared to developed world. To be honest, what I have seen.
Hmm.
So, uh, for example, I'll tell you just one example, which is one of the big thing right now is health. Okay, health is important, right? So way back in India, I was hearing when I was, I was in bits, hearing that startups like, promoting Skype telemed kind
Telemedicine.
of thing on Skype. Because the problem is the doctors are not able to go to the rural areas or remote areas. Okay, it's not cost effective.
Yes.
As a result, that the rural people doesn't have access to good health. So can we do something? Um, can we do something that at least not giving full medical? Of course, digital might not work, but
Yes.
at least certain part you could do
Yes.
that. So that was happening 10 years back. I do remember this one.
Yeah.
That some news are really like, wow, that's insane. Like, on Skype you're doing it,
And
and
that
this
is
is promote.
that is what is now saving us. A lot of patients who can't now travel are getting their treatment from telemedicine because of
Exactly, right, exactly. And now this kind of telemedicine is happening now in countries like in Switzerland, which is super developed. Okay, because of cost cutting. So they didn't have problem with the accessibility. Doctors are everywhere, but visiting a doctor is too expensive.
Mm.
So see the reverse here. Initially, we as in India or even in Africa, I can say all these developing countries, putting a good quality doctor in a remote area is too expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe people don't want to go, or sometimes it's just too expensive to do from the government or the private side. Same thing happening here, that even if you can put a doctor from here to some location, it's too expensive. So you cannot have those things. So in this way, people were way ahead. For example, digital money.
Yes.
We were using all this digital platform way back, right? I mean, this was not like I won't say the promoting anything, but like for example, Paytm, it was there in back in I remember
20.
2018 11 sorry 2010 11 had started coming, 2012 to pick it up, right. Very good thing, very. And before that, you had in Africa this money, mobile money. Africa was the country, or like Kenya was the country actually brought in this concept where you, with mobile money, what can happen. And now we are having for the last 1 year in Switzerland this mobile money, that hey, nothing to pay with card, just you scan something, or with the phone number you can transfer money. And I was like, oh, that's too primitive. So there are, so what I say, that in Western world the thing has been that things are too stable, they have hit the plateau. So bringing any changes takes a lot of time. Even bringing digital change is a lot of time. For example,
Now our field in energy sector, how do you see it? Especially solar.
energy sector, they are quite, of course, advanced because everything is automated, because labor is too expensive.
Correct.
So when labor is too expensive, then you want to solve a problem as soon as possible. Right? So you put extra money on that. Plus the government provide you extra like subsidies and all this stuff. So you put well-trained people installing those panels, installing those power plants.
Yeah.
Well-trained people maintaining those things. So this is happening on that. So of course they have their other challenges, but at least on the other part, they are pretty good. So it's all about that they think long term. That they don't see that, okay, I'm going to put a plant now. I'm looking into 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
I'm not looking next year what's going to happen or in next 5 years what's going to happen. So that's how the whole investments are made here, that infrastructure should remain. So a lot of infrastructures here, if you come, they're really high quality. They have been made in way back. Like I live in a house which is made in 1950s or 1940s.
Wow.
Well insulated. Like during winter, I can be really without not much of clothes on me. I can move around in my house. And winters could be very harsh in Switzerland, right? So that's how the efficient systems they have trying to make. So investment in quality infrastructure, it's very, very essential. It's very essential for it. And that's what I think other countries should also live with that. Don't make infrastructure spending millions of dollars and ultimately the infrastructure is not, you can't do it you can't use it after 5 years. Doesn't make sense.
No, that is true. I fully agree with you. I think we have to invest in long-term infrastructure. And of late, I think that has been government's policy also. They have been trying to sort of spearhead those initiatives or those investments that will give us a sustainable development cycle in the long term. Now, let us talk about something more fun. So, what was that time? I mean, I see while I'm asking you this question, I've already put myself in your position, and I know there will not be any proper answer for this. But still, for the sake of it, I'm asking. What was that time where you thought, yeah, I have to pursue entrepreneurship and I have to do it in this way? I know it's not a sudden urge. It's not like a spike and then you're done. It will be gradual, but there will be some tipping moment. So what was it?
I think the tipping moment was one was like finding the right teammates. I
Hmm.
remember that. So that was pretty cool. The second point was that we were really working hard, but we started getting response from people.
Okay.
So you need to have a response from people, response from the people you're serving,
Yeah.
whether they are your end user or they are your financer or market, whatever.
Hmm.
So it has to be like, like both sides. Cannot be just my urge, like I want to do it, and then ultimately no one
Yeah.
no one
Like customer
cares about it.
validation is
Yeah,
important.
customer or end user, whoever you want to bring value to. Okay. So that happened. And then I think my tipping point was where I felt, yes, I'm going to start full time and leave everything was way back in 2015, October. I remember that we won this Forbes award. So where
Oh,
I got 100K dollars, that's around 70 lakhs now in Indian rupees term.
uh-huh.
And that was very nice because I remember that that was
Very nice.
thousands of application
Uh-huh.
went into, we just wrote that, we just want to teach lamps to how to make lamps to children. It was a very basic application.
Hmm.
And I like to keep things very simple. Sometimes people say that, it's so very complicated, but you just said it so simply. It looks so easy, but that's not who I am. I just make it like look sound simple because that's I want to understand.
Yes.
And it was a simple application. We got it, and then Forbes. We were very thanks to Forbes and Pratt Foundation way back in 2015 gave us 100K to start. And when you have 100K to start with, you have a confidence that okay, I have some cash, I have some money to do it.
Yes.
I don't think so, to be honest. I won't say that I started everything when I had nothing. No, I didn't do that one. I had this awards, I had some cash, I had my team in place, and then I decided, okay, now I want to do full time. Before I was doing on weekends, my evenings were going into that, but not. So I waited for some period where I feel that okay, I'm stable, because it's very easy to get frustrated with this process. You can do it for 6 months, you could do it for 1 year. If things are not working, you'll give up. It's not that easy. So it's important to think like that okay, I'm here for long term.
Ah,
Let me get my first foundation strong. Yeah.
yeah. No, now that you have said it's easy to get frustrated, let us put this question in a different way, in a non-frustrating way. That as a millennials, first of all, we have very short attention span.
True.
Anything that doesn't attract us in 5 minutes, you take 5.5 hours or 5.5 years, you'll not get attracted to it, or and your attention will not go there. And second, we want everything instant. Be it Maggie, be it noodles, be it marks, be it Instagram live or Instagram answers, everything should be instant.
Right.
Now, between the short attention span and the instant in a generation, while we are fighting for something that requires a prolonged effort and whose results can be seen after considerably a longer period of time, effectively when we are still alive. Uh, how do you think we should go ahead of it?
It's a very tricky question actually, like, because it depends on the systematic changes what we have to bring.
Hmm.
So you cannot say that climate action, I think you're referring to the climate action part, right, which is long term.
Yeah.
So it cannot be part of one topic in your day, that in half an hour I read something climate change, okay, I have to think about climate, in next half you're just watching some series on Netflix. It doesn't happen that way. So that's what I say, systematic change we have to bring. So this climate change has to be part of, I believe, has to be part of every thing we are doing in our life. For example, I'm waking up, what am I eating? Is it climate friendly or not? I can be brutal, let's say, be harsh on that. Of course we can talk about what degree of harshness you want.
Yes.
I'm coming out of my house, am I taking a right transportation to go to my house? How am I helping this thing? Okay, I'm going for shopping, buying my clothes and things. Am I doing right thing? Am I buying climate friendly clothes, or I'm just buying something cheap and dirty from the shop?
Uh,
And then you come back, and also it has to be, since we have such a short span, but if you add those short span and you're getting triggers at different moment in your day,
It's 7 o'clock.
that will help us. Okay, how
Yes.
to do it. So I think that's the way to go. Otherwise it's challenging.
So that's a very, very, very good answer. I think we have to sort of inculcate it in every juncture of our day-to-day life.
Yeah.
But here I think, what do you see the role of young leaders on the mainstream politics and mainstream activism? because see, Greta Thunberg is commonly referred. In fact, she started the revolution. Fridays for Future is something that all of us should acknowledge. And Greta is like sort of half, like even more than half, but we have like between me and Greta, we have 10 years of age difference. But if she's doing it now so early, then there is still a considerable future ahead of her, and she can be part of a greater revolution. But we need so many Greta Thunbergs. We need so many Govind Upadhyayas. We need so many of other entrepreneurs, policy advocates. So, in that note, there is a conjecture that should the youth come into active policy making and active politics to drive the change themselves, or be behind the conventional and mainstream politicians and sort of put pressure or sort of pushing them to make choices. Like on one side, you have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is pushing for Green Deal there. On the other hand, you have Fridays for Future as a movement in Europe, but EU itself is pushing it because of the pressure it is getting from this thing. So there is one active movement, there's passive movement. So which do you think should be in mainstream more, and what are the other suggestions you have?
I think, from my opinion, it has to be balanced. Both side is needed. You cannot have only bottom up or the ground revolutions are not happening on the policy level. Both has to be balanced in a way that when a lot of people are talking, a lot of people want some changes, politicians have to change. Yeah. Okay, so look at India. I'm saying the people who used to say that, okay, first I need to give them food. Food was the topic. Roti kapda makan, right? I'll give you, vote me on that. Next phase came. I remember that if you go in rural areas and all, people say education. Girls should be educated.
Yes.
Why? Because it came from the ground. So then I remember that education became free. We started having, just politicians started giving bicycles to the students, even especially girls. Yes. That, okay, you get bicycle for free. Yes. Now the era has come that every student gets a laptop now in election time.
Yeah.
Okay? Because this is coming from the ground side, that what people are looking into. Right? Now, the problem is here that I think people are very conscious. People are very conscious from the demand side. Like we in India, in Africa, people are conscious that, okay, I'm ready to do some sacrifices here and there. If right policies are made for me. So some societies really works when people really push and the government implement very fast. Something similar to, let's say, European society or Swiss society. It's a small countries with small population. Population is also very educated, and the politicians are also very closely related to people.
You have referendum for everything there.
Yeah. Referendum, people have to vote on that. But in European side also, like if people are really against something, you cannot implement. That's not going to happen. Yeah. Same goes in India or similar countries in Africa, that where people need to be well educated at what they are doing, for sure. So Greta effect need to be there. But on the policy side, sometimes it becomes very, very lethargy and slow process. Yeah. So I think that's where the young millennials like us can go up and become the bridge, because I believe totally there's a generational gap.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that when I talked to my parents and all, in my time, we used to do this, we used to do that. I'm sure, like, when he was talking to my grandpa, yeah, in my time, I used to walk for 100 kilometers for school. What you're doing? You have a bicycle at least, right? Something like that. So when you have on the demand side that the population super young, and then you have a politicians who are very old people, very wise and old people. I won't say that it's a wise old people, but there's a mismatch. There's a communication gap between them.
It is.
And that can be only fulfilled if some of us can be on their side. I don't think that it's very easy to become politician. It's a very hard job, and really takes a lot of time to do it. But it's a step-by-step process where people should look for to go into policies and regulation.
True.
Basis. So, like I said, that it depends on country to country, and also depends on like the government has created this kind of infrastructure where people can go up. In some countries, it's just not possible.
Yeah, that is true. I know. I was just reading this meme. They were like, our father. They used to tell I had to cycle these many kilometers to go to school. Now we will tell our children, I bloody survived a pandemic, so this is this thing. So that is what we are going to tell our children. But I think it will be more good if we can tell them that we have also fought for your future and we have secured this planet for your future. So before closing, I would like to pick your brain on 2 points. One, uh, what should young entrepreneurs should do? I mean, you've clearly told there are no shortcuts. Hard work and perseverance are something that are key ingredients for success. But apart from this, what should they do to make a career in clean tech? And second, uh, how uh, how is it important, or rather, we have talked about the drive, but how is it important for many young people to come into this climate change narrative with ventures like yours?
Right. So first question was that how youth should do to become an entrepreneur in the green field, right? The first.
What should they do? Your tips for them, your hacks for them.
My hacks is just read and gain knowledge as much as possible. You know, it's not an easy topic. Technology is evolving very fast, and people's behavior also goes into that. So if you really want to do something on the clean tech and all, it's very important to understand how the clean tech can impact your society, your own society.
Yes.
Try to implement yourself first. So I remember, like, when we are making these lamps and all, I used to study under them to see really does it make sense or not. And days I have spent doing that, you know, days I've spent staying on some small light to really experience that what people will go. That helped me also to think that, okay, what design I have to make. So first, try to take it on yourself. Don't start preaching people. First, do for yourself. Try to understand it, then see that what contribution I can make. So that's what one thing. Don't jump direct. On the second part, Subbu, you had what all the people should do to come into
clean tech. Important for them. Like, why should more youth should come into this? Like, what is your message? Like, sort of what you call your Mann Ki Baat to youth on asking them to come for careers in clean energy.
My Mann Ki Baat. That's a really a big word, but I think again it goes again reflecting the same thing. That if you want to be part of this movement, first do something, bring some changes in your life, and you will see a greater change on that.
Yeah.
Really, like just doing a small bit of your contribution. That okay, I just walked 1 kilometer instead of taking some car or some this. Just do that part. You'll feel that what changes you have brought, and you'll feel good about it. Yes. And I think that's the way, because we as a whole might not be able to change everything at one go as an individual, but if everyone does small bit, they will get more influenced. That because you don't have to directly impact. Who is saying that you have to take care of all the world? No, you don't have to. But what you have to take care is about yourself first. Do the changes, and out of 100 people, if everyone is doing, and even like 2% people come up and become entrepreneur and really go ahead, it's already good enough. We don't have to fight in two fronts then. Okay, only one front is there that bring all those value addition, how we can save the planet. Yeah.
No, that is.
I hope I was able to answer. Huh?
No. You answered the question on Mann Ki Baat by talking about Dhan Ki Baat, that they should have a drive and they should also have their own perseverance. So, thank you very much for talking to me patiently for the last 1 hour. And thank you very much for actually accepting to be part of this first episode. This is very special because one, we both are from same university, so that BITS bond. I'm very happy to host a BITSian in this episode for the first time. And second, we share the same passion for both capacity building as well as solar, and most importantly, Africa. So I think I've learned a lot from our chat since in the last 1 hour, and I hope people who are watching also, they will get the drive, and they will listen to your Mann Ki Dhan Ki Baat, and they will also try to pave their way into clean energy or technology. Thank you very much. And before we finally sign off, let us have a picture with both of our cups in hand so that we can see. Yeah. Thank you very much, Govinda. Thank you for
Thank you, Subbu. Take care. Thanks a lot for inviting me. I hope it was you also enjoyed, and
thoroughly.
we're also fighting a big front. I think you should do with yourself once. It will be lovely to see that all the answers you ask me, you should also tell, and it will be a very interesting journey for all the viewers and all the people to
Maybe if we complete one season and end of season, I'll invite you to ask me the same question.
know. With pleasure, I'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a nice
Thank you.
day.
You too. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye.